In the heart of tornado country, where the winds show no mercy and life changes in a heartbeat, one man's act of courage sets off a chain reaction that no one saw coming. Jack Rayner, a humble single father with a haunted past, is just trying to raise his daughter in peace when a monstrous twister tears through his small Kansas town. Amid the wreckage, he pulls an unconscious woman from the debris, bruised, battered, and barely alive. What he doesn't know is that she's Ariana Steele, a missing billionaire whose face is plastered across national headlines. As the storm subsides, a deeper tempest brews, one of fame, secrets, and undeniable connection. Ariana's presence flips Jack's quiet world upside down, and soon the man who wanted nothing more than solitude finds himself on red carpets and rooftop gardens in Manhattan. But behind the wealth and glamour lies betrayal, heartbreak, and a truth neither can run from. This isn't just a story about surviving a tornado. It's about the whirlwind of fate that pulls two broken souls together and the love that rises from the rubble. When the storm is over, what's left might just be the beginning of everything they never knew they needed. The Kansas sun had a way of lighting the world in golden layers before the storm ever dared whisper its name. It was early evening, and Jack Rayner stood on the porch of his weather-worn farmhouse, watching his daughter chase fireflies across the front lawn. His flannel sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, sweat clinging to his brow from another long day rebuilding fences and patching roofs around town. Out here, neighbors helping neighbors. It was just the way things were. "Gotcha!" Lily squealed, cupping her hands around an unlucky insect and holding it up like a trophy. Her laughter was a sound Jack never grew tired of. 8 years old and full of the kind of joy Jack hadn't felt since her mother passed 5 years ago. The memory crept in like a ghost, but he pushed it aside. He had today, and Lily was smiling. "Don't let it suffocate," he called out with a half smile. "I won't. I'm just saying hi." Jack chuckled and leaned against the porch railing, sipping from a chipped coffee mug. It still smelled faintly of paint thinner from earlier in the day, but he didn't care. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about surviving, healing, one day at a time. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. "You gonna eat or just stare at the horizon like a cowboy in a sad song?" came the familiar voice of his sister, Marcy, who dropped by at least 3 times a week to make sure Jack didn't forget he was part of the human race. "I'm getting there," Jack said, not taking his eyes off Lily. Marcy stepped out, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Town says we're in for a nasty system tomorrow. Some folks are talking twisters." Jack's jaw tightened. "They always say that this time of year." "Still, you should check the generator. Make sure the storm shelter's good." "Already did," he wanted to say, but nodded instead. Marcy meant well. After Jack's wife, Emma, died in a flash flood during a rescue mission, his over-preparedness wasn't a weakness, it was survival instinct. Just then, a dust-coated pickup truck pulled up to the hardware store across the gravel road. It wasn't a regular. Jack squinted. Out stepped a woman dressed in practical hiking gear, her hair tied up in a messy bun, dark sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked out of place, clean, polished, but the way she scanned the map in her hand showed she wasn't just passing through. Marcy raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's new." Jack didn't respond. He was already stepping off the porch. Lily called after him. "Can I keep the firefly?" "If it wants to stay," he said over his shoulder. The woman looked up as he approached, lowering her sunglasses. Her eyes were startling, a cold, clear gray that held a weight he recognized instantly. Trauma. She smiled politely. Sorry, I think I took a wrong turn back at the intersection. Is this Whirlwind County? Jack nodded. You're here, just maybe not where you meant to be. I'm looking for someone who can show me around. Quiet areas, land plots, local farms, research, mostly, she said, folding her map. Not many tourists come looking for farmland. I'm not a tourist, she said, but offered no more. I run the hardware store, Jack Rayner. She hesitated, then extended her hand. Anna Steele. He shook it. Firm grip. No diamond rings. No pretension. Still, something about her didn't add up. Well, Anna, not sure what kind of research you're doing, but you might want to put it on hold till this storm passes. Forecast's looking rough. I'm used to storms, she said, slipping her glasses back on. But thanks for the warning. Jack watched her cross the street again, stepping into the store like she belonged. He had no idea then that this woman, Anna, Ariana, whatever her name truly was, would turn his life inside out. That she would become both the storm and the calm afterward. Back on the porch, Lily let the firefly go, and Jack whispered to himself, I've got a feeling trouble just landed in town. And he was right, but he had no idea just how much beauty sometimes came wrapped in wreckage. The old diner on the edge of town wasn't much to look at. Cracked vinyl booths, a jukebox that hadn't played a song since 2003, and a waitress named Ellie who ran the place like she owned the county. But Ariana Steele, still moving under the alias Anna, found something oddly comforting about it. Maybe it was the smell of burnt coffee or the quiet hum of the ceiling fan spinning above her, as if trying to keep the sky from falling. She sat alone in the corner booth, sipping sweet tea and poking at a chicken-fried steak she had no intention of finishing. Her laptop sat closed beside her, dusted with breadcrumbs. It wasn't just the landscape she was researching, it was herself. She was tired of looking in mirrors and seeing her family's empire staring back at her. The Steele name had bought her everything and taken just as much. She checked her phone. 8 missed calls from her executive assistant and 2 from her father's legal team. Ignore. She had to. If they found out she was here, alone, anonymous, they'd drag her back into the high-rise boardrooms and steel gray expectations she'd fought to escape. Outside the window, the sky was turning the kind of green that unsettled even the locals. Clouds swirled like something alive, impatient. The wind began to whistle. Ellie switched the radio to the emergency station, her hand trembling only slightly. Ariana noticed. That normal? She asked. Ellie shrugged. Depends on the week, but when the sky looks like that, you keep your eyes open. Tornadoes don't knock. Ariana nodded, watching as a pickup truck with a load of lumber sped past the window, the driver's eyes flicking skyward. She felt the unease settle in her chest like a stone. In New York, storms were dramatic and distant, rain tapping against high-rise windows while she sipped wine and read quarterly earnings reports. Here the storms were personal. They came for you. Back at the hardware store, Jack had just closed up shop. The radio in the back office crackled. Tornado watch issued for Whirlwind County. Potential supercell development within the next 2 hours. Residents advised to seek shelter. He didn't wait. Years of firefighting and storm response had taught him to take the first warning seriously. He texted Marcy to come grab Lily, already mentally checking off the town's older residents who might need assistance. And then he remembered Anna. He turned toward the diner. Inside, Ariana stood to pay her bill, just as the wind howled loud enough to shake the glass. Power flickered. Ellie grabbed a flashlight and barked to the few patrons, "Get to the basement now." Ariana hesitated. She hated basements, enclosed spaces, shadows, memories. But she followed, the storm's growl growing louder by the second. Outside, Jack ran through the wind, shielding his eyes. He burst into the diner just as the front windows imploded inward, a violent breath of nature sending glass and debris flying. He ducked instinctively. "Anna!" he shouted. She turned, their eyes locking through the swirling dust. Before she could speak, the ceiling groaned with a dreadful sound. Jack sprinted across the room just as a beam broke free. He tackled her to the ground as the structure around them collapsed. The world roared. Then darkness, time passed. But how much, neither of them could say. Ariana drifted in and out of consciousness, pain blooming in her ribs, dust choking her lungs. Somewhere above her she heard her name, or the name she was using, echoed in a voice rough and desperate. "Anna, stay with me, I've got you." Jack, her fingers twitched toward the sound. He was alive, and he was trying to find her. In the darkness of splintered wood and shattered tile, Ariana felt the storm rage on, but somewhere beneath it, a strange sense of calm began to take root. Jack was coming for her, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone in the wreckage. 2 days before the tornado hit, Jack Rayner was stacking bags of concrete in the back of his hardware store when the bell over the door jingled. He expected to see Marcy or maybe old Mr. Denham looking for replacement screws again. Instead, he saw her. Anna stepped through the door like someone who didn't quite know how to belong in a place like this. Her boots were clean, her jacket tailored, and her sunglasses stayed on even in the dimly lit interior. Jack didn't say anything at first. He watched as she walked slowly down the first aisle, scanning the shelves like she was in an art gallery. She paused in front of a rack of seed packets. "Something you're looking for?" Jack finally asked, setting the concrete down and wiping his hands on a rag. She turned, offering a polite smile. "Fencing wire, the barbed kind." He raised an eyebrow, planning to keep something in or keep something out. "Just studying rural layouts," she said too quickly. "I'm writing a paper." Jack wasn't buying it, but he didn't press. "Fourth aisle, halfway down on the left." She nodded and moved off with a kind of grace that didn't belong on cracked linoleum floors. Jack followed, curious despite himself. She didn't ask questions like a local. Her hands weren't calloused. Her watch probably cost more than the register. "So what brings you to Whirlwind?" he asked, keeping it casual. "Looking for quiet, space to think." Jack chuckled. "Plenty of that out here, some would say too much." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'll take that fencing wire." He rang her up, watching her out of the corner of his eye. Her license, when she handed it over, read Anna Steele. No middle name. The address was an apartment in Denver, probably fake. "Are you staying at the B&B?" "Yes," she said. "Just a couple nights." "Well," he said, sliding the receipt across the counter, "watch the skies. This time of year, the weather changes faster than you can drive." She hesitated, then nodded once. "I'll be careful." As she stepped back outside, the wind caught her hair, loosening it from its bun. She didn't bother fixing it. Jack watched her go, a strange feeling settling in his chest. She wasn't who she said she was. He was sure of that, but he also knew somehow that she wasn't dangerous, just lost. The next morning began deceptively calm. The air was thick, still and heavy, like the town was holding its breath. Jack sat at his kitchen table sipping coffee while Lily built a fortress out of cereal boxes and peanut butter jars. The morning news crackled softly on the old radio, warning of a low-pressure system, the kind storm chasers dream about and farmers dread. He didn't like it. He'd lived in Kansas long enough to know nature didn't always give second chances. By noon, the temperature had risen 10 degrees. A siren test went off at 1 p.m. Jack didn't wait for the real warning. He pulled out the checklist: backup water, flashlights, radio, Lily's stuffed rabbit, emergency medical kit. The storm shelter in the backyard, an old root cellar, was prepped. At 3:27 p.m., the emergency alert screamed through every phone and television in the county. Tornado warning, touchdown imminent, seek shelter immediately. Lily looked up, her small face pale. "Is it real this time, Daddy?" Jack nodded, scooping her into his arms. "Yeah, baby, but we're ready." Marcy had promised to meet them at the shelter, but Jack couldn't wait. He opened the cellar door and helped Lily down, then climbed back up to lock it from the inside. As he turned, he saw something that made his stomach clench. A single car, silver, compact, fishtailing along the gravel road. Tires skimming puddles, windshield wipers frantically battling wind and rain. It was her. Anna. Jack didn't think. He ran across the yard as the first wall of wind screamed overhead, flattening corn and snapping power lines. He waved his arms. She saw him, slammed the brakes, but the car slid into a ditch. Jack reached her door just as the first debris hit. A tree branch snapped and flew like a javelin, missing him by inches. He pulled the door open and yelled, "Storm shelter! You'll never make it out driving." Anna's eyes were wide, terrified, but she nodded and scrambled after him. Lightning forked through the sky, illuminating the tornado forming in the distance. It wasn't a funnel yet, but it would be soon. Jack turned to guide her, but the wind knocked them both flat. The last thing he saw before everything went black was Anna reaching for him, and the sky opening up like a wrathful god. The tornado wasn't just a funnel, it was a freight train made of black clouds and screaming wind, tearing its way through Whirlwind County like it had a grudge to settle. Roofs flew like playing cards, trees snapped in half like matchsticks, and debris rained down with the sharp-edged fury of 1,000 razors. Jack Rayner staggered to his feet behind the diner, blood streaking down his forehead from a flying shingle. His ears rang with the high-pitched whine of pressure drop. Around him, buildings folded in on themselves like dying animals. The sky had turned into a rotating wall of charcoal. But he didn't care about any of that. He only had one thought. Anna. She'd been right behind him. They were running toward the shelter, and then nothing. He turned toward the collapsed diner, or what remained of it. Half the roof was gone. The walls had buckled inward. Glass littered the ground like shattered stars. Somewhere in that mess, she was in there. "Anna!" he bellowed over the howl of the wind. No response. His boots slipped in the mud as he clambered over the rubble, ignoring the pain in his leg and the sirens blaring in the distance. Each step felt like wading through molasses as the wind fought him every inch. Another crash. Lightning split a power pole 100 feet away. Sparks danced along the wet ground. Jack dropped to his knees and began digging with bare hands. He heaved aside broken boards and clumps of insulation, ignoring the sting of splinters. Sweat and blood mixed on his face. "Hang on!" he roared to her, to God, to whoever might be listening. Then movement. A hand, pale and dusty, twitched beneath a fallen beam. He almost cried. "I've got you!" Jack shouted, gripping the beam with both arms. It took all his strength, but he lifted, grunting, cursing, screaming with exertion, until it gave way just enough for him to slide her free. Her body was limp, covered in debris, but she was breathing, shallow, uneven breaths. A gash ran along her temple, and one arm bent at an angle that didn't look right. Jack cradled her gently. "Anna, can you hear me?" She groaned, her eyes fluttered. "Jack," she whispered, barely audible. "Thought I was dead." "Not on my watch." He pulled off his flannel shirt and wrapped it around her like a blanket. Behind them, the twister roared off toward the next county, leaving a silence more deafening than the storm. Jack looked around. The town he loved was broken, but not beaten, and in his arms, a stranger, one he barely knew, was suddenly the most important thing in the world. The sirens stopped. The wind died. In the distance, the wail of ambulances began to cut through the silence. Jack sat on the edge of the rubble with Anna, Ariana, wrapped in his shirt, her head resting weakly against his chest. She was trembling, not just from the cold or pain, but from the weight of surviving. "Can you walk?" he asked gently. She shook her head, wincing. "I think something's broken, maybe my arm." Jack looked around. First responders hadn't reached their street yet. Cell towers were down. He had no choice. He hoisted her carefully into his arms, her body light but unresponsive. Every step to his truck was agony. His knee throbbed from a likely sprain, and blood still trickled from his temple. But he didn't stop. At the truck, he slid her gently onto the passenger seat and slammed the door shut against the growing drizzle. "Inside," she murmured, "I didn't think I'd survive that." Jack glanced at her. "Neither did I." He drove them back to his farmhouse, one of the few buildings on the edge of town still standing. The storm had ripped down trees and signs, but his home was intact, miraculously. As he carried her inside, Lily ran to the door. "Daddy!" He knelt briefly to hug her. "I'm okay, baby. We're okay." Lily looked up at the woman in his arms. "Is she a friend?" Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, she is now." They laid Anna on the couch. Marcy, still inside with Lily, hurried to bring blankets, water, and their basic first aid kit. Jack cleaned Anna's wounds with quiet, practiced hands. His firefighter training came back in full force. Control bleeding, stabilize the limb, check for concussion. Her eyes followed him the whole time. "You didn't have to come back for me," she whispered. He looked her dead in the eyes. "Yes, I did." There was silence for a long moment, filled only by the ticking clock and the crackle of a battery-powered emergency radio. Then Anna spoke, voice barely above a breath. "My name's not Anna." Jack froze. "My real name is Ariana Steele." He didn't blink. "Like Steele Enterprises." She nodded. "I didn't lie to hurt anyone. I needed to disappear. To find something real." Jack leaned back slowly. Of all the possibilities he'd imagined, fugitive, reporter, ghost from the past. This hadn't been one of them. A billionaire, in his arms, in his home, in his life. "Well," he said finally, eyes steady, "you found it real, whether you're ready for it or not." And as the rain whispered against the windows, Ariana Steele, CEO, heiress, runaway, closed her eyes and let herself feel safe, for the first time in years. The next few hours were a blur of exhaustion, pain, and patchwork care. Jack moved with quiet efficiency, tending to Ariana's wounds, while Lily fetched supplies with wide, serious eyes. Marcy stayed calm, her years of raising Jack and serving as the town's de facto triage nurse kicking in. "I've seen broken arms worse than that one," she murmured as she wrapped Ariana's limb in a makeshift sling. "You'll live, sugar, just stay still." Ariana managed a soft smile. "Noted." Jack stood by the window, watching emergency vehicles crawl through the wreckage of Whirlwind like ants over a shattered anthill. He hated the feeling. Waiting. Being helpless. Somewhere in the wreckage were people he knew, maybe people who didn't make it. But his choice to save Ariana hadn't been a mistake. He was sure of that. Lily crawled up beside Ariana on the couch, placing a small, crumpled drawing in her lap. It was stick figures, one tall, one small, and one with long brown hair. Above them, a huge heart hovered like a balloon. "This is you, Daddy, and me," Lily said, pointing. "I added you 'cause I like your voice." Ariana blinked, her throat tightened. "Thank you, sweetheart. That's beautiful." "You can keep it," Lily said generously, "unless you're rich and already have, like, gold paintings and stuff." Jack nearly choked on his coffee. Ariana smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "It's more precious than anything I've got." Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Jack sat with Ariana on the porch, wrapping her in a wool blanket while the generator hummed in the background. The storm had passed, but the emotional winds hadn't settled. "You saved my life," she said softly. "You were buried. I couldn't just leave you." "You could have. Most would have. Especially after the roof caved in." Jack stared into the darkness. "I've lost someone before. I wasn't going to let it happen again." Silence. "I was engaged once," Ariana said, voice brittle, "to a man who thought money was more important than truth. I walked away from everything, stock, media, pressure, just wanted to see what the world looked like without security guards and corporate masks." Jack looked at her fully now. "And did you find it?" "I found you," she said simply. His breath caught, but he didn't reply. Not yet. They sat together beneath the stars, two people who'd been through their own personal storms, now stitched together by one built of wind and dust. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the modest living room. Jack's home was small but functional, the walls lined with family photos, a few military medals, and Lily's chaotic crayon masterpieces. Ariana woke slowly, aching from head to toe, but wrapped in warmth and the lingering scent of flannel and cedarwood. She sat up with a groan. Jack appeared from the kitchen, holding a tray with toast, coffee, and scrambled eggs. "You look better," he said, setting the tray on her lap. "I feel like I got hit by a tractor." "You sort of did. A wind-powered one?" She smiled faintly, lifting the coffee. "Is this instant? Are you insulted?" "Only slightly." Jack chuckled and sat across from her, watching her eat. She had the delicate manners of someone raised with forks that cost more than his mortgage. But there was no pretense in her now, no layers. She'd been stripped to the raw. "Someone's going to come looking for you," he said quietly. "Soon." "I know." "Reporters? Security?" She nodded. "I didn't plan to be rescued by a man who'd end up on national news." Jack raised an eyebrow. "I'm not interested in interviews. I'm interested in truth." Ariana set the coffee down. "You want truth? Here it is. My father built steel enterprises from the ground up. Then he married a woman who hated me and promoted her son to VP while cutting me out. I walked away, liquidated what I could. I was traveling under an alias to find land for my environmental foundation. I wasn't supposed to get stuck in a tornado or meet you." Jack leaned back. "So this was all just an escape?" "At first," she said. "But now, I don't know. Maybe it was the beginning of something." They locked eyes. Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding neither had words for yet. Footsteps on the stairs broke the moment. Lily appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Morning," Jack said. She shuffled over and climbed onto the couch next to Ariana. "Did you dream about the tornado too?" Ariana nodded. "Every time I close my eyes." "You're safe now," Lily said solemnly and placed her small hand in Ariana's. "Daddy makes sure of that." Jack looked away, swallowing hard. Outside, the radio crackled with updates. Rescues in progress, missing persons lists, FEMA deployment. The town would need every able hand in the coming days. But for now, in this tiny corner of Kansas, healing had already begun. And somewhere in the wreckage, something fragile and new was starting to bloom. Night settled gently over the Rainier farmhouse. Outside, the town still buzzed with generators, emergency crews, and volunteers trying to patch what was left of Whirlwind. But in the quiet of Jack's living room, the world had narrowed to two voices, two sets of eyes, and a story that neither one had told in years. Ariana sat curled on the couch, one arm in a sling, a blanket draped over her lap. Jack leaned against the window frame, arms crossed, watching the sky where stars were beginning to emerge through the soot and haze. "Why did you join the fire department?" she asked. He turned slightly, surprised by the question. "Because someone once pulled me out of a burning building when I was 6. My dad fell asleep with a cigarette in his hand. The house went up in flames." Her eyes widened slightly. "I remember the fireman's face," Jack continued, his voice lower now. "Not his name, just the way he looked at me like I was worth saving. I wanted to be that for someone else." Ariana looked down, fingers tightening on the blanket. "That's beautiful." Jack shook his head. "Didn't save Emma." A long silence. Ariana looked up. "Your wife?" He nodded slowly. 5 years ago, flash floods hit a neighboring county. I was helping evacuate a nursing home. She came with me, volunteered like she always did. A culvert collapsed. She didn't come out. "I'm so sorry, Jack." "She was the brave one. I just followed her lead." Their eyes met. 2 stories, 2 losses, matching shades of guilt wrapped in stoicism. "You look like someone who carries grief well," Ariana said softly. "I carry it because I have to. For Lily." He looked at her differently now. Softer. Not just as a stranger or a survivor, but as someone who had known that same hollow ache, the kind that doesn't go away, only learns how to coexist with your breathing. "What about you?" he asked. "Why'd you really run away?" She hesitated, then sighed. "Because I didn't know who I was anymore. Every morning I woke up in penthouses I didn't decorate, ate food I didn't cook, dated men who loved the steel name but not the girl behind it." Jack moved closer, sat down across from her. "And now?" "Now," she smiled faintly, "I'm a woman recovering from a broken arm in a house that smells like cedar and pancakes, being looked after by a man who speaks in truths." Jack didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached forward, his hand brushing hers lightly, reassurance, not romance. At least not yet. "You're not alone here, Ariana, not anymore." And for the first time since she had left her billion-dollar world behind, she believed that might actually be true. The next morning, the peaceful bubble around Jack's home burst. A low hum broke the silence, then a buzz, a chime, and then a dozen more. Ariana's phone, which had miraculously survived the storm inside her waterproof backpack, lit up with notifications. She stared at the screen, missed calls, voicemails, hundreds of emails, and then the big one, a push alert from a national news outlet. Breaking, missing billionaire Ariana Steele found alive in tornado-ravaged Kansas town. She froze. Jack entered the room with 2 mugs of coffee. "You look like you saw a ghost." Ariana held out the phone silently. He read the headline, jaw tightening. How did they find out? "I don't know. Maybe my assistant filed a missing persons report. Or the car. Maybe it was registered." Jack sat beside her slowly. "This changes things." "Yes," she whispered. Lily peeked around the corner, still in her pajamas. "Why's the TV showing pictures of her?" she asked. Jack turned toward the small screen. Sure enough, news vans had reached the edge of town. A helicopter view showed the destruction, and in the corner, a blurry zoom of Ariana walking with Jack near the rubble. Someone had snapped a photo. "I didn't think it would be this fast," she murmured. "I thought I'd have more time." Jack looked at her. "You're not safe here anymore, not from the media." "But I'm not ready to leave." He didn't answer. His silence said enough. Within an hour, the sheriff called. Reporters were swarming, demanding interviews. Some were offering money, others were trying to locate the farmhouse. Marcy called from down the road. "They're asking neighbors which house you're staying at. You'll need to decide, honey. Are you gonna hide, or are you gonna step forward?" Ariana hung up and turned to Jack. "What would you do?" "I'd protect my family, which means helping you protect yours, even if that means letting you go." His words were like a gut punch. "But," he added slowly, "if there's a way through this without losing what we've started, I'm willing to try." Ariana nodded. Her voice was small but steady. "Then I'll face them, but not alone." Jack stepped closer, his hand sliding into hers. "Not alone." They stood side by side, watching the camera vans roll into view. The past had caught up, but maybe, just maybe, the future had too. Ariana stood in Jack's front yard, flanked by emergency responders and reporters. Cameras clicked, questions flew like arrows, and microphones reached toward her like arms, trying to drag her back into a life she wasn't sure she wanted anymore. She wore Jack's denim jacket over her sling, less for warmth, more for comfort. His presence beside her, silent and strong, was the only reason she hadn't bolted. "Miss Steele, why were you in Kansas under a false name? Did you stage your disappearance? Is it true you were staying with a local man? Is this a love affair or a publicity stunt?" Jack's jaw flexed. Ariana held up a hand. "I came to Kansas alone, under the name Anna Steele, to research land for my environmental foundation. I did not intend to disappear. I had no staff, no security, just me, the open road, and a storm that nearly killed me. If not for Jack Rayner, I wouldn't be standing here." "Are you in a relationship with Mr. Rayner?" someone shouted. She didn't answer, not with words. Instead, she turned to Jack, laced her fingers with his, and said, "He's the reason I'm alive. That's all you need to know." The cameras loved it, but Jack didn't. Later, back inside, he confronted her quietly. "That's all they need to know?" he echoed, voice tight. Ariana sat on the edge of the kitchen table. "I was trying to protect you. The world I come from, it chews people up." "Then why bring me into it?" "Because I don't want to go back alone." Jack crossed his arms. "You don't get to walk in, shake my life up, then pretend the media circus is just background noise." "I never meant for it to happen." "But it did." Silence fell. The distance between them grew. Finally, Jack said, "I need time." Ariana nodded, heart sinking. "I'll leave in the morning." Neither one slept that night. By sunrise, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled into Jack's gravel driveway. Ariana's assistant, Donna, a lean, sharp-eyed woman in a pantsuit, stepped out with a security detail and a satellite phone pressed to her ear. "Ms. Steele, we need to get you to the airstrip. The board's demanding a statement." Jack stood on the porch, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Ariana turned to him. "Will you say goodbye?" He didn't respond. Not at first. Then finally, "Don't forget who you were when you got here." Her throat tightened. "I won't." Lily ran to her, flinging small arms around Ariana's waist. "Can you come back?" "If your daddy lets me." Lily nodded solemnly. "I'll convince him." Ariana kissed her forehead, turned to Marcy with a hug, then looked one last time at Jack. His face was still, but his eyes held the storm she had no power to calm. And then she was gone. The drive to the airstrip was quiet. Dana rattled off schedules and stock updates, but Ariana didn't hear a word. Her mind replayed every second from the last week. The porch talks, the laughter, Lily's crayon drawings, Jack's calloused hand holding hers. When the private jet lifted off the cracked runway, it felt less like flying and more like falling away from something she hadn't realized she needed until it was already out of reach. Jack never cared much for attention, but attention came anyway. Within a day of Ariana's departure, local and national outlets swarmed Whirlwind to get a shot of the man who saved the Steele heiress. They offered money for interviews, posed questions he had no interest in answering, and even tried to dig into his past. Military records, his wife's obituary, even Lily's birth certificate. He told them all the same thing, no comment. But the media didn't care. They ran headlines without permission. "Quiet hero of Kansas. Meet the man who rescued a billionaire. Single dad, former Marine, town savior. The cowboy and the heiress. America's real-life fairy tale." It made Jack sick. He kept working, hammering roof beams, clearing debris, replacing shingles. It grounded him, reminded him that he was still just Jack from Whirlwind, not the man they kept calling America's heartthrob. But he couldn't escape the whispers or the stares. Even Lily's school sent home a letter requesting media boundaries. Marcy cornered him one night. "You're shutting down again." "I didn't ask for any of this." "No, but maybe it's a sign, a reminder." Jack looked up sharply. Reminder of what? That life doesn't stop for grief. Maybe it's okay to feel again. Jack exhaled, long and heavy. "She's gone, Mars. Doesn't mean it's over." That night, Jack found himself sitting on the porch again, staring out at the stars. In the quiet, he could almost hear Ariana's voice beside him, her laugh, the way she said his name. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he realized he wanted something more than survival. He wanted her. Ariana Steele sat in a glass-walled boardroom overlooking the Manhattan skyline, but her thoughts were miles away, still anchored in the Kansas wind and the steady rhythm of Jack Rayner's quiet strength. The room buzzed around her, lawyers, executives, brand consultants, all of them talking at her, none of them talking to her. "We've negotiated exclusive rights with the New York Times," Dana was saying. "You'll do a feature spread, cover story, full redemption arc, humanize the brand." "I'm not a brand," Ariana muttered. The chatter stopped. Dana adjusted her glasses. "With all due respect, Ariana, you are. And the public is eating this story up. It's everything they want: tragedy, survival, romance." "It's not a romance," Ariana snapped louder than she meant. She rubbed her temple. "It was real, and I left it behind." The room shifted uncomfortably. One executive coughed and asked about the foundation's new land project. Another tried to pivot to social impact campaigns, but Ariana had already checked out. That night she sat alone on her penthouse balcony, wrapped in a shawl and sipping tea that tasted like dust. She scrolled through pictures of Whirlwind County, the flattened diner, the mangled trees, and then one that stopped her breath. Jack and Lily, standing in front of a rebuilt swing set, both smiling. She hadn't known someone had taken it, hadn't known how much she missed the simplicity of it all until her chest physically ached. She called Dana. "I need a break from all this. I'm going back." "To Kansas?" Dana groaned. "Ariana, the press. Let them follow if they want. I'm not hiding. I'm going home." 2 days later, Jack Rayner stepped off a private plane onto the tarmac outside New York City. Lily's hand clutched tightly in his. He didn't like it. The city was too loud, too tall, and too full of people pretending not to see each other. But when the invitation came, with Ariana's handwriting on the envelope and a plane ticket inside, he couldn't say no. Not when Lily had found it and exclaimed, "We're going to see her again?" Jack nodded, unsure if it was a good idea, but now as a sleek black car whisked them past skyscrapers and through Central Park, he was more certain than ever. This was her world, not his. Ariana greeted them at the steps of her penthouse, with tears in her eyes and no cameras in sight. "I asked for privacy," she whispered as she hugged Lily, then Jack. "You got it," he replied, his voice gruff. The penthouse was stunning. High ceilings, modern art, floor-to-ceiling windows, but it felt sterile. Lily looked around, awed and intimidated. "You live here?" she asked. "For now," Ariana said. "But I've been thinking a lot about Kansas." Over the next few hours, they shared stories. Ariana gave them a tour, introduced them to her personal chef, who Lily promptly asked if he knew how to make pancakes, and took them to the rooftop garden she'd been cultivating since her return. "This is where I go when the city gets too loud," she told Jack as they stood beneath twinkling string lights. "It's beautiful," he admitted, "but it's not home." "No," she said softly, "that's still in Whirlwind." They looked at each other then. Really looked. But just as Jack started to lean in, a sharp voice cut through the night. "Well, well, so this is the famous Jack Rayner." A man in a $1,000 suit stepped onto the rooftop, his smile all teeth. Ariana froze. "Nathan, what are you doing here?" Nathan Bishop, her ex-fiancé, CEO of a rival tech firm, and the man who'd once tried to turn Ariana's company into a corporate puppet. "I came to make a public offer," he said smoothly. "Merge our foundations. One press conference, a few magazine covers. You'd be unstoppable." "I'm not interested," Ariana said coldly. Nathan turned to Jack. "You must be the Kansas rescue fantasy. Cute story. But let's not pretend this ends with her on a farm, barefoot and baking bread." Jack didn't flinch. "You might want to leave." Nathan smirked. "This isn't over." "Oh, it is," Ariana snapped. "Security will see you out." As Nathan left, Ariana exhaled shakily. Jack watched her for a moment, then asked, "Is this what your life's always like?" "More than I'd like to admit." "I don't belong here," Jack said quietly. She reached for his hand. "Then let's go back where we are." The next morning, Jack woke up in a bedroom that looked more like an art installation than a place to sleep. White linen sheets, sculptural lamps, and a minimalist skyline view framed by sheer drapes. The silence was artificial, too clean, too curated. Lily had been whisked off by Ariana's assistant to a private children's museum and brunch, an idea Jack wasn't completely sold on, but Ariana had insisted, let her experience it. She deserves both worlds. He stepped into the kitchen where Ariana sat on a stool sipping espresso. She wore a soft blue sweater, hair pulled into a neat braid, beautiful, composed, intimidating. "Sleep okay?" she asked, smiling. "Woke up wondering if I was still in Kansas." She laughed lightly. "I get that a lot." They sat across from each other, an awkward silence blooming between them like a slow fog. It wasn't the distance of strangers, but the unease of two people whose lives no longer fit in the same shape. "I feel like I'm on a movie set," Jack admitted. "Everything looks unreal." "I used to think this was what success looks like," Ariana said. "Now it just feels like armor." Before Jack could reply, Dana entered briskly, tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but Ariana, the board moved your quarterly briefing. It starts in 10 minutes. Jack stood. "I should go get Lily." "You don't have to," Ariana started, but he was already moving. They didn't speak again until evening, when Ariana returned from her meetings to find Jack sitting in the rooftop garden with Lily asleep in his lap, surrounded by small planters of tomatoes and lavender. "She likes the museum," he said, not looking at her. "I'm glad," Ariana said, "and I'm sorry. For this morning, I should have made more space for us." Jack stood slowly, lifting Lily into his arms. "You don't have to apologize. I knew who you were when I brought you into my life. I just didn't know what it would feel like to step into yours." "Jack, I love Lily more than anything. Her peace, her safety, that's non-negotiable." And you think I threaten that? I think this city, your world, moves too fast, and we've already been through one storm. He didn't say goodbye, just turned and walked inside. Ariana watched the sky darken, knowing that unless she made a choice, and soon, she might lose the one person who had ever seen her for who she really was. The next day brought unexpected calm. Ariana arranged a quiet tour of the Metropolitan Museum for Jack and Lily. This time she went with them. No security detail, no cameras, just a woman trying to bridge two vastly different worlds. Lily darted between ancient statues and impressionist paintings like a butterfly, narrating every discovery with wide-eyed wonder. Ariana stayed close, holding Jack's hand when he let her. They paused at a painting of a mother and child by a sun-dappled river. Lily stared at it for a long time before whispering, "That looks like you and me." Ariana knelt beside her. "You think so?" Lily nodded. "If I had a real mom, I'd want her to look like you." Jack stiffened. Ariana reached out slowly. "Lily, I'm not your mom, but if I ever had the chance, I'd be proud to be someone you looked up to." Lily smiled and leaned into her. "I know." Later that night, back at the penthouse, Ariana tucked Lily into the guest room bed. Jack stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes unreadable. "She told me you sing to her when she's scared," Ariana said. Jack gave a small nod. "Emma used to do that." Ariana sat on the edge of the bed and hummed a soft lullaby, a melody she barely remembered from her own childhood. Lily's eyes fluttered closed. Outside, Jack leaned against the hallway wall. "She's opened up to you," he said. "That doesn't happen easy." "She's special," Ariana replied, stepping out quietly, "and strong, like her father." They sat on the couch in the dark, wine glasses untouched on the table. "I never thought I'd see her look at someone like that again," Jack admitted. "Not since Emma." Ariana met his eyes. "She still needs you more than anything. I'm not trying to replace her." "No," Jack said, his voice softening. "You're not." "But maybe," she whispered, "I could help rebuild what was lost." Jack turned toward her and, for the first time, didn't resist the pull between them. He leaned in, their foreheads touching. "You already are," he murmured. And just like that, something unspoken shifted between them, something deeper than gratitude, gentler than passion. A beginning. The rooftop was quiet, the Manhattan skyline glittering like a spilled jewelry box in the distance. Jack and Ariana stood side by side, wrapped in blankets, silence filling the space between them. They'd finished dinner hours ago, steak for Jack, some overly complicated seared salmon dish for Ariana. And now there was only the cool wind and the question neither had dared ask yet. "What happens next?" Ariana finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack sipped his beer. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether we keep trying to fit into each other's world, or build something new." Ariana turned toward him. "You're thinking about going home?" Jack nodded. "Whirlwind's rebuilding. They need me. Lily needs roots. And you." He let the words hang. "I need peace," she said. "I've had noise for so long, I forgot what silence feels like." "Then come with us." She blinked. "You mean move?" "Why not?" Jack said. "Sell the penthouse, take a break from the headlines. You don't have to disappear to find yourself again. You already did that in Kansas. Ariana's eyes filled. What if I fail at it? What if I'm not the woman you think I am? Jack stepped closer. Then we fail together. But we try. That's what matters. She took his hands in hers. You're not just a hero, Jack Rayner. You're a good man, the kind I didn't believe existed anymore. And you're the woman I didn't know I was waiting for. The kiss was soft, earnest, no fireworks, no dramatic swell of music, just warmth, trust, and the slow healing of two hearts that had carried too much pain for far too long. At that moment, it didn't matter that they came from different worlds, because they'd found one another in the wreckage, and now they were building something new. The next morning brought headlines Jack never expected, and Ariana feared. Ari's name was trending again, but this time it wasn't about survival or love. It was about leaks. A popular gossip site had obtained pages from Ariana's private journal, written during her time in Kansas. The excerpts were raw, vulnerable. She'd written about Jack, about his grief, about the scars he carried, and how much he reminded her of herself. But there was one line that hit hardest. He still talks to her, his late wife. It's beautiful, but I wonder if there will ever be space for me. Jack stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, staring at the headline. Billionaire falls for firefighter, but can he let go of the past? He didn't need to read further. The damage was done. Ariana entered, breathless, holding her own phone. I didn't share that, I swear. Those were private notes. I had them saved in the cloud, but I thought they were secure. You wrote about my wife? Jack asked, his voice low. She froze. I never meant to hurt you. He set the phone down, jaw clenched. You said you wanted real. You said you weren't bringing the circus, but now I'm a headline again. I was trying to process everything, you and Lily. It wasn't a diary I meant anyone to read. You wrote about my daughter, too. I wrote about how much she meant to me. Jack looked away. You brought the media right to our front door, again. The sting in Ariana's chest wasn't from guilt. It was from fear. Fear that the fragile connection they'd built had just cracked under the weight of the truth. You think I used you. I don't know what to think anymore. There was no shouting, just silence. The kind of silence that follows when something inside two people slips out of alignment. Jack left the room, and Ariana stood in the kitchen, tears burning her eyes, realizing that even the most beautiful story could unravel in a single line. Ariana left the penthouse 2 hours later without saying goodbye. She didn't take a car service. She didn't alert her staff. She just walked, past honking taxis, down endless blocks of glass and steel, until she stood in the middle of Central Park, uncertain of what to do next. For the first time since the tornado, she felt like a woman without direction again. She had no press team, no charity gala to attend, no rescue to be saved from, just herself and a silence she couldn't fill. Across town, Jack packed his and Lily's things. Their time in New York was over. Ariana's world was beautiful, yes, but it wasn't stable, and Jack needed stability for Lily, for himself. But as he folded Lily's pink hoodie, he found something tucked inside the pocket, the crayon drawing, the one Lily had made of the three of them together, under a big red heart. He stared at it for a long time. Lily came in, quiet. Are we going home now? Yeah, Jack said. We are. She hesitated. Will she come back with us? Jack didn't have an answer, not one he was proud of. She loves you, you know, Lily said. She told me in the museum. She said I was her favorite part of the whole city. Jack knelt down, pulling her close. People can love us and still not know how to stay. But maybe they just need a reason, Lily whispered. Meanwhile, Ariana returned to her penthouse to find Dana waiting. I canceled all interviews, Dana said, and I traced the journal leak. It came from an encrypted sync folder accessed through an old assistant's credentials. Ariana didn't even flinch. Doesn't matter, it's out there now. Are you going after him? I think he's already gone. Dana crossed her arms. Then go after the girl. Ariana blinked. Lily? Jack won't listen to a press release or an apology on air. But that little girl, she sees the truth, and Jack will listen to her truth. Ariana stood still, frozen in realization. She had run away from everything she built, searching for something real, and now she might lose it because she didn't know how to hold on. But maybe it wasn't too late. Not if she went back to where it all began. Back to the town that nearly killed her. Back to the man and the child who saved her life. The Kansas plains stretched endlessly ahead, vast and quiet. Just as Jack remembered, but this time they felt emptier. Jack and Lily returned to Whirlwind County beneath a sky as blue as forgiveness, but neither of them spoke much on the drive from the airport. The air smelled like earth and rain, and everywhere they turned, signs of recovery dotted the landscape. New frames rose from scorched foundations. Fences had been rebuilt. Tarps still covered a few roofs, but laughter echoed again in places where silence had once ruled. Marcy met them at the farmhouse, arms outstretched. You boys sure know how to make a dramatic exit and re-entry, she said, hugging Jack tightly before kissing Lily's forehead. Jack smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. They unpacked slowly. Jack fell back into rhythm, checking the generator, fixing the back porch rail, sorting mail. But something about the house felt off balance now, like a frame missing a critical support beam. Lily picked up on it too. She's not coming, is she? She asked one evening at dinner, her voice small. Jack hesitated. I don't know, baby. She would if she knew you missed her. I don't think she's the one who needs convincing. Lily looked away, disappointment settling over her shoulders like a storm cloud. Jack felt it too, deep in his bones. It wasn't just that Ariana was gone. It was that she'd taken something intangible with her, a spark, a possibility. That night, Jack walked the town alone. He passed the rebuilt diner, now just a cement foundation and a half-raised frame. Past neighbors who nodded with respect but didn't linger. Everyone had seen the headlines. Everyone knew Ariana Steele had left. But no one asked why. Because they understood what it meant to lose something you weren't ready to hold. At the edge of town, Jack stopped and stared at the storm shelter behind the rebuilt school. He remembered that day so clearly, the roar of wind, the fear in her eyes, the moment he pulled her from death's grasp. He whispered, "Why'd you have to go?" And the wind, ever familiar, answered only with silence. Back in New York, Ariana stared at the document glowing on her tablet, a letter of resignation. It wasn't just a separation from her corporate duties. It was a severance from a version of herself she no longer wanted to be. She had built steel enterprises with brilliance and ambition, but it had come at the cost of her identity, her quiet, her soul. Dana entered hesitant. Board meeting starts in an hour. I won't be attending. Dana blinked. What? I'm stepping down, selling my shares, liquidating the lifestyle. I've made my decision. Are you sure? This is your legacy. No, Ariana said firmly. It was my inheritance. My legacy is what I choose next. Dana sat down slowly. And what is next? Ariana smiled faintly. The foundation, but not from a tower, from the ground, from where people actually bleed and rebuild. I want to build homes, shelters, clinics, especially in towns like Whirlwind, places the world forgets about until tragedy hits. Dana didn't argue. Ariana stood, her eyes scanning the skyline one last time. There's a little girl in Kansas who thinks I'd make a good mom someday. That's a legacy I want to live up to. She left the office with no ceremony, no headlines, just purpose. Later that night, she stood at her penthouse window, a suitcase packed at her side. The penthouse, once a symbol of power, now felt like a gilded prison. She left it behind. As the private plane banked toward the Midwest, Ariana looked out over the clouds with something new in her chest. Not fear, hope. 2 days before Ariana's arrival back in Whirlwind, Lily wrote a letter. She didn't ask permission. She didn't tell her dad. She just wrote it, kneeling by her window, scribbling with purple ink and stickers that glittered under the lamplight. Dear Miss Ariana, I don't know if Daddy told you, but I miss you, not because you're famous. I don't care about that. I miss the way you make pancakes shaped like stars and how you laugh when the wind messes up your hair. Daddy tries to be happy, but he's quieter now. He looks at the porch swing like it's waiting for someone. I think you were scared. Grown-ups are allowed to be scared, but sometimes the best people come back anyway. If you come back, I'll save your spot at the table. Love, Lily. P.S. You can still be my mom, even if it's not official. She folded it neatly and handed it to Marcy the next morning. Can you make sure it gets to her? Marcy's eyes shimmered as she took it. I'll see what I can do. What Lily didn't know was that the letter made its way to a local news producer first, someone who remembered the little girl's name from the earlier coverage. The producer shared it with a colleague who tweeted a photo of the crayon-covered envelope with the caption, "Sometimes healing starts with a letter." It went viral overnight. By morning, the letter had been read by over 4 million people, and one of them was Ariana Steele, who saw it just as her plane descended toward the familiar Kansas horizon. She read it twice, then again, and by the time the wheels hit the tarmac, she was already in tears. She didn't care about the cameras waiting outside the airport. She didn't care about the questions or the flashing lights. She only cared about one thing, Lily Rayner, and the man whose silence had broken her heart. This time she wasn't running. She was coming home. Jack and Lily returned to Whirlwind County beneath a sky as blue as forgiveness, but neither of them spoke much on the drive from the airport. The air smelled like earth and rain, and everywhere they turned, signs of recovery dotted the landscape. New frames rose from scorched foundations. Fences had been rebuilt. Tarps still covered a few roofs, but laughter echoed again in places where silence had once ruled. Marcy met them at the farmhouse, arms outstretched. "You boys sure know how to make a dramatic exit and re-entry," she said, hugging Jack tightly before kissing Lily's forehead. Jack smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. They unpacked slowly. Jack fell back into rhythm, checking the generator, fixing the back porch rail, sorting mail. But something about the house felt off balance now, like a frame missing a critical support beam. Lily picked up on it too. "She's not coming, is she?" she asked one evening at dinner, her voice small. Jack hesitated. "I don't know, baby." "She would if she knew you missed her. I don't think she's the one who needs convincing." Lily looked away, disappointment settling over her shoulders like a storm cloud. Jack felt it too, deep in his bones. It wasn't just that Ariana was gone. It was that she'd taken something intangible with her, a spark, a possibility. That night, Jack walked the town alone. He passed the rebuilt diner, now just a cement foundation and a half-raised frame, past neighbors who nodded with respect but didn't linger. Everyone had seen the headlines. Everyone knew Ariana Steele had left. But no one asked why, because they understood what it meant to lose something you weren't ready to hold. At the edge of town, Jack stopped and stared at the storm shelter behind the rebuilt school. He remembered that day so clearly, the roar of wind, the fear in her eyes, the moment he pulled her from death's grasp. He whispered, "Why'd you have to go?" And the wind, ever familiar, answered only with silence. Back in New York, Ariana stared at the document glowing on her tablet, a letter of resignation. It wasn't just a separation from her corporate duties. It was a severance from a version of herself she no longer wanted to be. She had built Steele Enterprises with brilliance and ambition, but it had come at the cost of her identity, her quiet, her soul. Dana entered hesitant. "Board meeting starts in an hour." "I won't be attending." Dana blinked. "What?" "I'm stepping down, selling my shares, liquidating the lifestyle. I've made my decision." "Are you sure? This is your legacy." "No," Ariana said firmly. "It was my inheritance. My legacy is what I choose next." Dana sat down slowly. "And what is next?" Ariana smiled faintly. "The foundation, but not from a tower, from the ground, from where people actually bleed and rebuild. I want to build homes, shelters, clinics, especially in towns like Whirlwind, places the world forgets about until tragedy hits." Dana didn't argue. Ariana stood, her eyes scanning the skyline one last time. "There's a little girl in Kansas who thinks I'd make a good mom someday. That's a legacy I want to live up to." She left the office with no ceremony, no headlines, just purpose. Later that night, she stood at her penthouse window, a suitcase packed at her side. The penthouse, once a symbol of power, now felt like a gilded prison. She left it behind. As the private plane banked toward the Midwest, Ariana looked out over the clouds with something new in her chest. Not fear, hope. 2 days before Ariana's arrival back in Whirlwind, Lily wrote a letter. She didn't ask permission. She didn't tell her dad. She just wrote it, kneeling by her window, scribbling with purple ink and stickers that glittered under the lamplight. "Dear Miss Ariana, I don't know if Daddy told you, but I miss you. Not because you're famous. I don't care about that. I miss the way you make pancakes shaped like stars and how you laugh when the wind messes up your hair. Daddy tries to be happy, but he's quieter now. He looks at the porch swing like it's waiting for someone. I think you were scared. Grown-ups are allowed to be scared, but sometimes the best people come back anyway. If you come back, I'll save your spot at the table. Love, Lily. P.S. You can still be my mom, even if it's not official." She folded it neatly and handed it to Marcy the next morning. "Can you make sure it gets to her?" Marcy's eyes shimmered as she took it. I'll see what I can do. What Lily didn't know was that the letter made its way to a local news producer first, someone who remembered the little girl's name from the earlier coverage. The producer shared it with a colleague, who tweeted a photo of the crayon-covered envelope with the caption, "Sometimes healing starts with a letter." It went viral overnight. By morning, the letter had been read by over 4 million people, and one of them was Ariana Steele, who saw it just as her plane descended toward the familiar Kansas horizon. She read it twice, then again, and by the time the wheels hit the tarmac, she was already in tears. She didn't care about the cameras waiting outside the airport. She didn't care about the questions or the flashing lights. She only cared about one thing: Lily Rayner, and the man whose silence had broken her heart. This time, she wasn't running. She was coming home. Ariana walked slowly through the charred remains of Whirlwind Elementary's East Wing, clipboard in hand. The school had suffered the worst of the storm, and reconstruction was just beginning. Standing beside her were the foundation's new project manager and a few local contractors, Jack included. She wore a hard hat now, a utility vest over her flannel shirt, and a pair of dusty boots that had once belonged to Marcy. "It'll be a few weeks before we can reopen the lower classrooms," the project manager explained. "But the frame's solid. Once we reinforce it with storm barriers, we'll be golden." Ariana nodded. "Good. I want the kids to feel safe again. Not just protected. Safe." Jack glanced at her and gave a small smile. "You've changed." "I've returned," she corrected. Together they walked through the main hallway, ducking past loose wires and scaffolding. Ariana paused at a mural Lily had helped paint with her class, a bright sun over a line of stick figure children. The tornado had torn through most of it, but one phrase remained visible at the top. "We stand back up." She ran her fingers along the wall. "That's exactly what we're doing." Back at the house, Lily waited with Marcy and a batch of slightly burnt muffins. Ariana bit into one, wincing. "They're brave," she said carefully. "They're food," Marcy replied dryly. "Barely." They all laughed, and Ariana felt something shift again, subtly but surely. This wasn't a visit anymore. This was her life. That evening, Jack sat with her on the porch swing, his arm resting behind her. "You sure this isn't too much?" he asked. She looked up at him. "The storm nearly broke me, Jack, but it also broke open the path I needed to walk, and that path led me here. You always talk like a poet when the sun sets." "Maybe," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. "But it's the first time in years I've felt like the words actually mean something." Fall arrived early in Whirlwind, carried in on winds that rustled the wheat fields and painted the trees gold. The annual harvest fair, delayed because of the storm, was finally rescheduled. The town needed it. After a summer of dust and heartbreak, joy was due. Ariana had never been to a real small-town fair. Her assistants once arranged an autumn gala with faux hay bales and imported cider. This was different. This was real. She wore jeans, boots, and a sweatshirt that read "Whirlwind Strong" in bold red letters. Jack wore his usual work shirt and ball cap. Lily wore a sunflower crown and insisted on entering every contest possible. 3-legged races, pie eating, and even a seed-spitting competition. "You're going to be sticky for days," Jack muttered, as she devoured a slice of pumpkin pie with competitive determination. Ariana laughed and dragged Jack toward the baking table. "What's this?" he asked, eyeing a sign that read, "Couples Pie Contest, Teamwork Required." "I signed us up," she said brightly. "Don't worry, I've seen you make chili." "Chili's not pie. That's why I'm in charge of sugar." They bickered, they spilled flour, they laughed so hard Ariana had to sit down to catch her breath. And their pie. Burnt crust, slightly undercooked, lopsided apple filling. They didn't win, but everyone remembered theirs. Later, as the sun dipped behind the Ferris wheel, Jack and Ariana stood by the fire pit, watching Lily twirl in her sunflower crown. People passed with nods and waves, no longer the stunned, curious glances they gave Ariana before. Now it was familiar, comfortable. "You're one of us now," Jack said. Ariana didn't look at him. She watched Lily, spinning in a swirl of dusk and laughter. "I hope so." He pulled her close. "You already are." Just when things began to settle, the past came knocking. It arrived in the form of a newspaper clipping slipped under Jack's door one morning. No note, no return address. Jack picked it up and read, "Ariana Steele's return to Kansas, rebrand or romantic fantasy." An exclusive report by Nathan Bishop. There was a photo of Jack, hammer in hand, standing beside Ariana at the school site. The article suggested Ariana's foundation work was a publicity stunt, a cover for a strategic corporate maneuver. It named him her blue-collar trophy, claiming their romance was an elaborate PR scheme. Jack's hands clenched. His past was no stranger to scrutiny, but this felt calculated. Ariana was already at the school site when he arrived, holding her phone with a look that could set fire to glass. "He leaked it to 4 outlets," she said, voice low, "and pushed the narrative that I used Whirlwind to relaunch my brand." "He always hated losing," Jack muttered. "It's not just about the article. He's trying to poison everything I've built." Jack paused. "Can he?" Ariana met his eyes. "Only if I let him." That evening, instead of hiding, Ariana called for a town meeting, an open mic forum in the community center. She stood before a packed hall, Jack at her side, and told the truth. About the article, about Nathan's past manipulation, about how Whirlwind had saved her, not the other way around. "I came here broken. You gave me room to heal," she said, "and I will not let anyone take that away from us." The room erupted in applause, and Nathan Bishop, watching the live stream from a penthouse in New York, realized he'd lost again. This time, not just the woman, but the war. In the aftermath of Nathan's failed smear campaign, something shifted in Jack. It wasn't that he finally trusted Ariana. He'd trusted her long ago. But something in him finally relaxed, as if the last piece of armor he wore had fallen off. He no longer waited for the sky to fall. He no longer second-guessed the joy blooming in his chest every time Ariana walked into a room. One cool evening, he set up a bonfire behind the house. Lily roasted marshmallows while Ariana sipped cider, curled beside him on a blanket. "You know," Jack said, watching the flames dance, "I spent a lot of time believing love like this didn't come twice in one life." "And now?" Ariana asked. "Now I think lightning does strike twice. You just have to stand in the right storm." Ariana leaned in and kissed him. "Then let's build our shelter together." They danced under the stars, slow, barefoot, and quiet. When Lily eventually fell asleep in Ariana's lap, Jack carried her inside. And for the first time, when he came back out, Ariana wasn't just waiting. She was home. The storm shelter behind Jack's house had been rebuilt better than ever. Reinforced steel doors, solar-powered lights, stocked shelves. It was the one place that had seen both of their lives collide and begin again. So that's where Jack decided to do it. He didn't tell Marcy or the neighbors or even Lily, though the child had her suspicions. Jack just told Ariana to meet him there after sunset. When she arrived, the path was lined with mason jars filled with fairy lights. Inside the shelter, a simple table was set with candles, 2 plates of chili, Jack's best dish, and a bouquet of wildflowers resting in an empty honey jar. Ariana stepped inside, touched and speechless. "This is where it started," Jack said, "where I pulled you from the rubble." She nodded. "I didn't just find you that day, Ariana. I found hope, and I've never let it go." From his coat pocket, he pulled a small wooden box. Inside, a modest silver ring shaped like a braided vine. "I know this isn't the kind of ring your world expects, but I hope it's the one your heart wants." Ariana covered her mouth, tears already spilling. "Yes," she whispered, "before you even asked. Yes." They embraced in the shelter, the memory of chaos replaced by a new promise. Above them, wind whispered through the wheat fields, but inside, everything was still. Everything was right. They didn't build a mansion, they built a home. Jack and Ariana moved into a renovated farmhouse at the edge of Whirlwind County, close enough to town for Lily's school and Jack's work, far enough out to enjoy the wind singing through the wheat each morning. The house had wraparound porches, an open kitchen, a cozy loft office for Ariana's foundation work, and a small room that Lily insisted be painted with stars. Ariana didn't need private chefs anymore. She cooked terribly at first, but with laughter and flour in her hair, and Jack standing behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, showing her how to season chili just right. The foundation took off like wildfire. With local hires and Ariana's backing, they began constructing 10 eco-homes in the next county, each one storm-resistant, sustainable, and affordable. Ariana insisted every house be named after someone lost in the tornado. Emma's house was the first. She didn't just bring change to Whirlwind, she became part of it. At the county planning meeting, Ariana spoke with conviction. "I came here as a stranger. Now I fight for this community because you all fought for me." Marcy put it best during Sunday supper. "That woman built more in 6 months than half the town did in 6 years." Jack smiled quietly, proud in a way words couldn't describe. At night, Ariana often stepped onto their back porch, a cup of tea in hand, looking out at the windmill silhouetted by the moon. "You okay?" Jack would ask, wrapping an arm around her. "Yeah," she'd whisper, "I'm finally okay." The media didn't vanish, but it softened. Ariana agreed to one final interview, a sit-down with a respected journalist who promised authenticity. The segment aired under the title, "Billionaire in the Heartland, Ariana Steele's New Chapter." In the interview, she spoke plainly about her decision to step down, about the storm that nearly killed her, and the small town and man that saved her. When asked why she stayed, she smiled and said, "Because I found something more valuable than any fortune, peace and love, real, rooted love." Jack made a brief appearance in the interview, holding Lily's hand and building a fence in the background. He didn't speak much, but his quiet strength was unmistakable. The world watched and, surprisingly, understood. The frenzy faded. The paparazzi lost interest, and Ariana Steele, once headline gold, became a symbol of transformation, not scandal. More importantly, her story inspired donations and attention to the causes she truly cared about. The Steele Foundation was flooded with support for rural resilience, mental health recovery after natural disasters, and small-town rebuilding efforts. At the Whirlwind grocery store, no one brought up the interview. They just passed Ariana with a smile and asked if she'd bring her chili to the next cook-off. She always said yes. They were married beneath a sky so blue it looked like it had been scrubbed clean by angels. The wheat field behind Jack's house became a cathedral of gold, swaying in rhythm with the breeze. Rows of wooden benches were set up between the stalks. The aisle was lined with sunflowers, Lily's choice. A white tent stood nearby, filled with pies, barbecue, and wildflower centerpieces. Ariana wore a simple ivory dress, hair braided down one shoulder, no veil, no diamonds, just a string of pearls her mother once gave her, and a heart wide open. Jack wore his best flannel under a navy vest. His vows were short, heartfelt, and made half the guests cry. "You walked into a storm, and somehow you became my calm," he said. "You didn't just save me, you showed me how to live again." Ariana's vows were written on the back of a blueprint page. "I spent years building towers and boardrooms, but you, Jack, you and Lily, you gave me a foundation I never had. You made me want to be still. You made me believe in forever." Lily was the flower girl and ring bearer. She tripped once and laughed so hard she made everyone else laugh too. The reception was a patchwork of joy. Jack danced with Ariana under string lights. Marcy gave a toast that started seriously and ended in a roast. The whole town came, teachers, firefighters, farmers. Even the mayor danced to a fiddle tune with a plate of ribs in hand. There were no headlines, no photographers, just love, land, and a new beginning. 6 months later, the first 10 families moved into their new homes, thanks to the Rainier Steele Foundation. The ribbon cutting was emotional. Each key handed off came with a story: a teacher who lost her home, a nurse rebuilding her life, a single dad with 3 kids and nowhere to go. Ariana gave each one a hug. Jack offered handshakes and quiet smiles. They didn't build homes with luxury. They built it with care. Back at the farmhouse, life settled into a rhythm. Mornings with Lily making pancakes, sometimes shaped like stars. Afternoons tending Ariana's new garden. Evenings helping with homework, reading stories, and planning the next big outreach project. Lily started calling Ariana Mom one day without warning. Just did it, like it had always been that way. Ariana cried in the kitchen. Jack held her for a long time. They framed Lily's original crayon drawing, the one with the 3 stick figures and the giant red heart, and hung it above the fireplace. Marcy came by often, now considered Grandma Marcy by Lily and the neighborhood kids alike. She ran the chili booth at local fairs, proudly wearing an apron that read, "Ask me about my billionaire daughter-in-law." For the first time in any of their lives, everything felt possible. The sirens blared once again, but this time there was no fear. It was spring, tornado season again. Jack and Ariana were ready. They stood just outside the new storm shelter, bigger, safer, and funded entirely by the foundation. It stood near the rebuilt school, a symbol of survival and vigilance. Inside the shelter, Lily clutched a walkie-talkie and called out, "All clear, Mom and Dad?" "Almost," Jack responded, scanning the horizon. He turned to Ariana. "Just like old times." She chuckled. "Except this time, we're not running." The sky grew dark in the distance, but the storm passed them by. Just wind and warning. No wreckage. Still, it reminded them of where it all began. Later that night, they sat on the porch together, watching the lightning flicker far off on the horizon. "You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't driven into town that day?" Ariana asked. "I do," Jack said. "And then I stop, because whatever came before, it led to this." Lily appeared, sleepily rubbing her eyes. "Can I sleep out here with you?" "Of course, sweetheart," Ariana said, lifting her into her lap. The three of them sat under the stars, a family stitched together by chance, disaster, and love. The wind blew gently across the fields, and somewhere inside that whisper it said, "You made it through, you found each other, and this time the storm passed you by."